Welcome to this explainer, everyone. Today, we're stepping right beyond the veil of the ordinary. We are diving into some of the most bone-chilling supernatural incidents drawn directly from across India. And let me tell you, we've got some absolute nightmare fuel lined up. We're going to explore the cursed blade of Jahaz Mahal, the haunting of Bhoy Alap in West Bengal, a COVID ward medical officer's sheer night shift horror in Himachal, and a relentlessly vengeful spirit in Rishikesh. So buckle up, because these documented accounts, they are absolutely going to change how you look at the dark.
So, right off the bat, we have to ask, what actually happens when you mock the dead? Well, it's pretty much the core theme of this entire explainer. Crossing spiritual boundaries, whether that's through blatant disrespect, accidental theft, or just blinding hatred, always, and I mean always, invites horrific consequences. And as you'll see, our first case study proves just how incredibly fast a single moment of arrogance can completely shatter a normal life.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Part 1. The Veil of Spirits. Bhoy Alap in West Bengal.
Now, to really understand this first haunting, you need a little context on Bhoy Alap. Basically, this is the night right before Kali Puja, a time when the barrier between the living and the dead is razor thin. We're talking spirits literally walking the earth. Local tradition has a very strict rule for this night. You have to eat 14 specific vegetables to ward off possession. Sounds simple enough, right? But our focus here is on a teenager named Drishti. Fueled by, typical teenage ego and skepticism, she explicitly ignored this sacred rule and actually mocked the very idea of returning spirits.
But here's the thing. Drishti wasn't the only one making a massive mistake that night. While traveling to a Kali Puja celebration with a group of friends, their cab pulls over near a cemetery. One of the boys in their group, Santosh, gets out in the pitch black and unknowingly urinates right on a Vaishnav grave. I mean, talk about the ultimate disrespect. That act basically served as an immediate beacon. A dark entity latched straight onto Santosh, following the teenagers right into the celebration, actively hunting for a permanent host.
So later that night, Drishti is completely alone on the rooftop. It's 3 a.m., she's just chatting on her phone. Suddenly, someone violently yanks her hair from behind. She naturally assumes it's her friend Arpita playing a prank, so she yells at her to knock it off. But then, she gets pulled so hard she literally falls to the floor. And from the shadows, a voice replies in Bengali, "I'm not Arpita." Drishti turns around, and there is a woman wrapped in a white cloth, eyes bleeding profusely, with her neck tilted at just this completely unnatural angle.
From that moment on, Drishti went from being a completely normal teenager to a vessel of just horrific escalation. Because she hadn't eaten those protective vegetables we talked about, the spirit was able to easily transfer from Santosh right into her. First it was a high fever, then erratic behavior, and then it reached a terrifying peak. Drishti's grandmother was a devout Vaishnav who regularly chanted the name of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, also known as O Gauranga. Hearing this holy chant actually provoked the entity inside Drishti into these violent frenzies. We're talking attempts at self-harm with a knife, and later, the absolutely horrifying sight of her walking upside down on the walls, laughing maniacally.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how extreme the solution had to be. Saving her required a deeply visceral, high-stakes tantric exorcism. A specialist was brought in, and he gave them one strict warning. Leaving his drawn protective circle meant certain death. Step 1. Drishti's father had to stand completely still in a freezing pond holding an empty pot on a new moon night. Step 2. The tantric performs a sacred fire ritual, a havan. Step 3. The entity inside Drishti starts screaming, violently manipulating the mother's emotions, trying everything to trick her into stepping outside that circle. Finally, as the father chanted God's name, this dark shadow physically emerged from Drishti, entered the pot, and was rapidly sealed and plunged into the water. Literally, one wrong move, and the entire family would have been destroyed.
Moving on to Part 2, The Cursed Blade, Jahaz Mahal, Madhya Pradesh.
This nightmare starts off so innocently at noon with a nice family lunch at the 15th century Jahaz Mahal Palace. But right around 1 p.m., an uncle named Mahesh goes wandering for a knife to cut an apple. Down by a deserted lake, he spots this stunning silvery blade tucked inside a golden tiger cover. Ignoring every common-sense instinct, he takes this forbidden object. By 2 p.m., while they're rushing to pack up in the heavy rain, the knife slips and cuts his finger. And by 4:30 p.m., this one simple act of theft has cursed the entire family,
plunging them into what would become an agonizingly slow, deeply oppressive car ride back to indoor.
During that drive back, it was like this heavy, unseen presence descended right into their vehicles. The behavior of the family members became utterly bizarre, almost hypnotic. Two colleagues riding in the car suddenly began mindlessly repeating the exact same sentence 8 times in a row. Other family members started laughing completely uncontrollably into the void. And Uncle Mahesh, he just sat there coughing continuously, totally oblivious to the fact that his finger was profusely bleeding all over the place. When they finally stopped at a tea stall, they all entered this bizarre trance, consuming 7 whole packets of biscuits and a staggering 10 cups of tea while just staring blankly. It deeply, deeply unnerved the local stall owner, as you might imagine.
But the real psychological horror centers entirely on Uncle Mahesh. The entity attached to that knife completely took him over, and it turned out to be a fiercely dominating female presence. Over the next few days, Mahesh was caught doing things you can't even imagine. He was devouring raw vegetables like a wild animal. He violently smashed his own head into a dressing table mirror while trying to slit his wrists, and perhaps most disturbingly of all, he was found dressing up in his grandmother's sari, applying her lipstick, and laughing at his terrified family in a woman's voice.
The family was terrified and desperately took him to a Pir Baba for an intense exorcism. The saint literally had to hit Mahesh with a cane for an hour straight while reciting mantras, trying to force the entity to finally reveal itself. And eventually, it did. From inside Mahesh, a woman's voice echoed out, "I am Chandrika. I want to marry him." That's when the chilling history was uncovered. Chandrika was a young woman who had been brutally murdered in 1995 with that exact same silvery knife. Her spirit was tethered to the blade, just waiting for years for someone to claim it and to claim her.
Let's shift gears to Part 3, COVID Ward Night Shift, Kangra Medical College, Himachal Pradesh.
So it's 2022. Dr. Janvi's 8 p.m. night shift begins, and she is completely isolated in the ward. What she doesn't know is that earlier, the cleaning staff had secretly allowed a pregnant COVID patient's family to touch the patient with unapproved ritual items. By 9 p.m., this patient's vitals are swinging wildly out of control. By 3 a.m., tragically, the patient dies. But it's the very next night that signals the true horrifying fallout. The ward staff arrives to find 2 local dogs lying dead right at the main entrance, blood dripping from their mouths, and a third dog twisting its neck in a completely unnatural way.
So, the crucial point is how the terror was born out of this total suffocating isolation. The ward is now completely empty. No patients. Yet, as Janvi and the nurses huddle safely outside the glass partition, the empty cabin lights inside start flickering erratically. Then, the bathroom tap audibly turns on and off all by itself. And right above them, the sound of rapid, heavy footsteps sprinting across the tin roof. Janvi's life spiraled out of control from there. The next day, she suffered 3 near-fatal accidents on her way home and started having vivid dreams of a bloodied woman in a white gown standing directly over her bed.
Now you might be wondering, why was Dr. Janvi specifically targeted by this entity? Well, the answer lies in local Bahati lore. There is a deep belief that vengeful spirits of women who died with unfulfilled desires of motherhood are dangerously attracted to the glow, the fragrance, and specifically, the bangles of a newlywed bride. And Janvi, she had just gotten married a month prior. To survive this, a local expert instructed her to immediately take off her bridal bangles and pray daily for the deceased patient's liberation. That was the only way to finally break the spirit's attachment to her.
All right, bringing us to our final story, Part 4, The Vengeful Spirit, Rishikesh, Uttarakhand.
This one starts with some high school drama that turns deadly. Vaibhav was absolutely crushed when his girlfriend Meher suddenly left him and blocked his number. When he found out she actually had a new boyfriend named Arjun, Vaibhav made a very toxic mistake. He called Meher up and literally threatened to kill Arjun. But then, tragedy actually struck. Arjun died in a gruesome motorcycle accident at a local tea point shortly after. Meher was devastated, and her response set the ultimate stakes. She cursed Vaibhav, telling him, "It's because of you that my love left this world. Now you too will die the same way."
From that moment, Vaibhav's life became an absolute parade of escalating paranoia. He had started eating non-vegetarian food for his gym routine, which, in a lot of spiritual lore, can actually make you a magnet for negative entities. The hauntings at the tea point where Arjun died were relentless. I mean, unseen hands literally pushed Vaibhav off his moving motorcycle. An old man appeared out of thin air just to emotionlessly warn him, "You won't survive," right before vanishing completely. At one point, Vaibhav witnessed a road accident and saw a faceless third boy standing there that literally no one else could see. And most terrifyingly of all, He rode home one night feeling the distinct heavy weight of an invisible entity sitting directly behind him on the back of his scooter.
The absolute climax of this relentless stalking occurred during the 2020 COVID lockdown. Vaibhav and a friend were hiding out from police patrols under a tree at night, right near that dreaded T-point. Vaibhav turns to his friend, just expecting a normal, quiet conversation. Instead, he sees his friend staring back at him with this wide, unnatural smile. And then, his friend's face begins rapidly turning a horrifying shade of blue as Arjun's spirit temporarily possessed him to deliver one final, physical threat.
Speaking directly through his friend's blue lips, the spirit hissed, "I'm dead because of you. Now you're going to die like me." Vaibhav screamed, ripped his hand away, and sprinted for his absolute life. In the end, it took a profound temple exorcism organized by his uncle, alongside a strict, permanent vow to give up non-vegetarian food, to finally save Vaibhav from the vengeful phantom waiting at that T-point.
So look at what we've unpacked today. We've seen a teenager's ego actively invite a horrific possession, an uncle's innocent theft trigger a buried 1995 murder curse, a medical night shift completely overrun by a mother's tragic longing, and a bitter breakup birth a relentless phantom. The takeaway here is undeniable. The spiritual world demands respect. So I'll leave you with this. What unseen boundaries are you unknowingly crossing today? Thank you so much for exploring these incredible accounts with me, and stay curious out there.